what is autism? The following are some essential insights. Professionals say that approximately 1% of the UK population have an autism spectrum condition. Autism is currently assessed according to our developmental history and the unusual and persistent behaviours that professionals later observe in us. There is no simple medical diagnostic test for autism. What this means is that there are no blood tests or scans available to determine whether someone has autism, so it can currently only be identified by our behaviours and impairments. It is, however, generally accepted amongst researchers, academics, professionals, and autism charities that autism can be defined as causing impaired social interaction, impaired social communication, and impaired social imagination. This is often referred to as the triad of impairments, but it still doesn't tell you what autism is. You see, these impairments do not define our experiences of autism. The map the professionals draw is not actually the territory we walk. Please watch on if you would like to take a walk in our shoes and see the world through our eyes. The problem is that for too long people have been looking on from the outside. Professionals have studied us and have concluded we experience the world around us differently to most. Our perceptions do differ, sometimes dramatically from those of others, but as perceptions cannot be seen by looking at us from the outside, it's our behaviours which end up being identified. So to understand our perspective, researchers would need to fully accept how we experience things differently to our peers, and not just that we do. So, what are perspectives? Sometimes we have different perspectives because we see things from different angles. At a glance, both these people have grounds to believe their argument is right. However, one may be more aware of facts than the other. For example, if one of them knows that other numbers have been painted down the street, and this one falls between the 5 and the 7, they also know it's a 6, not a 9. Therefore, one perspective will be more right than the other once more facts are taken into account, even though we may have perceived it differently to start with. Given this evidence, the person with the incorrect perspective can either research the evidence the other person presents and re-evaluate their view, or they can remain belligerent and continue to argue that it is a 9 because that is all they can see. But what about the times when you're looking at exactly the same thing and still draw a different conclusion to the others around you? There are times when two people can look at the same object or situation and for no immediately understandable reason see it totally differently to each other. Now, I'm sorry to have to do this to you, but remember the dress? This dress went viral back in 2015 when people quickly realised that to some the dress was clearly blue and black, whereas others saw it as clearly white and gold. Not only did the dress sweep through social media, but due to the consistent variations in perceptions, it even made it to the news. For the first time, society seemed to be aware of how drastically perceptions could vary from one person to the next. But imagine if it had only been 1 in 100 people that saw the blue and black version of the dress. Would the accepted reality be that the dress in this picture is white and gold, even though the truth is that it's blue and black? If this difference in perspective only affected 1% of the population, I wonder whether it would even have been discovered. Would they even have researched why the difference occurred? But really, imagine if only one child in every 3 to 4 classrooms had issues identifying that colour. What then? Would the children be told off for not getting it right when the answer is so simple and obvious to everyone else? Would their inability to perceive it as others do appear like defiant behaviour? Would therapists conclude that it was a success that the child finally said the dress was white and gold, even if the child still saw the blue and black? Now there's some food for thought. You see, we're told our perspectives are wrong, and that we've not perceived things correctly. It doesn't help that our difference in perception is hard to communicate, or that our differences in perspective can be so quickly dismissed. We see it all the time, with teachers, professionals and others, for example on the subject of a child being bullied. I've heard many parents tell me their views are dismissed. They're told outright their child isn't getting bullied, it's just their perception. But what about when their perception is their reality? Like with the blue, black, white, gold dress, you can't suddenly perceive it differently just because others around you do. It would be really helpful if people accepted that autism is actually just down to the way our brains are wired. This different wiring actually enables us to do things differently. We take in different information to most. Let's face it, that could affect our social interaction. We're seeing things differently. We communicate in different ways to most, which again could affect our social communication. And using our differently active minds to think outside of the box would totally affect the way our social imagination is perceived by others. In short, autism isn't a set of behaviors, it's how our brain works. The behavior is our attempt to communicate these differences. In fact, one could argue it's the operating system we were installed with. So, using the software analogy, let's pretend that 99% of the population have a Microsoft kind of wiring. The kind for whom it's easy to see the white and gold dress, and who can also socialize and play well together. The other 1%, you got it, we're wired for Apple systems. We struggle to communicate with and play on Microsoft systems. Our software just seems broken. But we all know that's not the truth. Although back in the day Apple systems never worked on Microsoft, they did outperform them in some areas. They just needed to be using their own systems. Imagine the world was made with only Microsoft systems in mind. By catering for the 99% of the population, the rest of us, those with different operating systems, would now seem broken within all areas of society. What we need is a new integrated software system to enable us to function and communicate effectively. We need society to follow the Microsoft and Apple analogy, so that we can learn to communicate with each other for the benefit of all users. Because in our own environment, using our own operating systems, we can achieve happy, satisfying and fulfilling lives too. We just need our differences to be accepted. Autism awareness is so last year. It's time to update to the new improved software system. Autism acceptance. Perhaps one day we'll aim for autism appreciation, but for now, autism acceptance is a step in the right direction. This video was brought to you by me, Monique Crane, a blogger, activist, campaigner, and the inspiration behind the Labour Party's Neuro-diversity manifesto. Like this presentation? Please give me a like if you appreciate the insight and want to see more on this and other neurodivergent topics. Subscribe if you want to be alerted when the next video is released. Please do leave a comment if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in future videos. And please do share this to raise acceptance of autistic people. It really isn't that much to ask for.